Hey everyone, today on Half Step Down, we're going to change things up just a little bit. July is Disability Pride Month, and as many of you know, our very own Rene Grano is differently abled, as he likes to say. He is visually impaired. So he wanted to share his story about what it's like being visually impaired as a student, as a boyfriend to his wonderful girlfriend Shayla, as being a co-host on a podcast. We thought it'd be important and a really cool way to share our story about what it's like to live with that kind of thing and what it's like to work with someone like that. Because at the end of the day, we all get to do what we want to do. We just do things a little bit differently. So we thought it was important to share this story. He's also written something that we've put on the website. So if you go to halfstepdownpod.com, you can also follow the link in our link tree. It's in the description of the episode. It's all over our socials. Again, we're at halfstepdownpod. You can find all that online and read the article and hopefully take something away from this episode. We really hope you enjoy it. Anyway, the episode starts now. Go.
Are we racing? Is this a race?
Yes.
How are you today?
I'm not bad.
Not too bad?
Yeah.
Doing well?
I'm doing well.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to Half Step Down, where two aging punk rockers talk about punk rock, pop culture, punk culture, and pop rocks.
There it is.
We are your hosts, the original face of radio, Rene Grano, and the generic Jose Martinez. How are you?
I'm good, man.
Yeah. I did want to ask you a question.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago on, I believe it was the Kessler episode where we had Kessler on the show. By the way, that was a great time. If you guys haven't heard it, go back and listen to the Kessler episode. We spoke a little bit about how your name is very generic and you had a story, but we never got to it.
Oh, yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
I can tell that story.
Sure. The reason I call you generic, the generic Jose Martinez, because that's your wrestler name.
Okay, yeah.
Right? That's why.
Okay.
And I'm the original face of radio because I have the face for radio.
Right.
So that's kind of where those are our wrestler names. If we had to use our real names, that would be our wrestler name.
Right.
But why does that come up? Why does that have a story behind it?
So the story behind that was my name is Jose Martinez, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give out my middle name, and I'm not going to give out my birthday.
Okay.
I'm sure we've said it on the podcast. Because of this experience. But maybe it was like 8 years ago.
Okay.
I go to renew my driver's license. I get the thing in the mail, and it says I owe like $6,000 for unpaid tickets in Oakland.
you've told me this story. Okay.
Now I've never been to. Well, I take that back. I've been to Oakland, but I wasn't there when these things happened.
Sure.
And then I'm like, okay, this is obviously a mistake, right? Like, I can prove this. A couple days later, I get a package at the door. The guy is like, are you Jose Martinez? Yeah. These are your papers. You've been served. Child support papers. At the time, I did not have children.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I go down. I take all this stuff. I go to the sheriff's station because I don't know where the fuck I'm supposed to go.
Yeah.
And I go to the sheriff, and I'm like, look, I got these two things. This is not me. Like, I would not be turning myself, you know what I mean? Like, but this is not me. I don't live in Oakland. This is my address. Let me show you my license.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, well, you got to go to the courthouse and contest it. I was like freaking out because I'd been driving around with this. They had suspended my license.
Yeah, you don't want to go to jail?
Yeah, I would have been.
You're like the Shawshank Redemption of like Oakland.
Yeah, so it turns out there's
me.
There's a Jose Martinez in Oakland who's just fucking running amok. But it took 6 months.
Jose Martinez, if you're listening and you're from Oakland, stop running amok.
Stop it, man,
because it was difficult for my cousin.
I paid like $120 to get my license reinstated. That they said they would give me back if the court found that it was not like my fault, but I never got it back.
Sure.
But it was a whole fucking process, like 3 trips to the courthouse, speaking before a judge. But I remember asking a buddy of mine who actually worked at the courthouse. Like, can you look this up? He goes, dude, anytime someone comes in with your name, we type it in the computer, we hit enter, and we leave. Because it compiles so many names.
Wow.
So it's like that was the thing. I'm like, all right, Now I regret keeping the name.
Yeah, it's so funny because my dad, I want to say about when he retired, maybe a little bit before he retired, he got served with child support papers, and at the time we're like, Dad, we got brothers and sisters we don't know about, and we turned to, and you know, we had to do all the research and stuff. Apparently, there was another Juan Grano out there. And he had a little boy and a little girl, and I was like, "Dad, we got a little brother, little sister," and it was just a whole fiasco. But we were able to clear it up. But yeah, it was that. So I'm sure it's happened to many, right? Many people who tend to have similar names, right? Similar
common names.
So I want to talk about something today. It might be a little shorter episode today, but we're kind of just gonna go. We're gonna go free falling here. We're just kind of go with the flow here.
Let's do it.
So July, Jose, did you know that it is Disability Pride Month in the month of July?
I did not know that.
Neither did I.
I feel like I should know that.
Yeah, I think I should know that. So for the audience who, I think I've mentioned it a couple of times on the show, right? A few times that I am actually visually impaired and or legally blind, right? I lost my vision in 2015. And I figured it'd be a good thing for us to kind of take a step back on the concept of what we do here at the show, which is talk about music, pop culture, have a grand old time. And I'd like to talk about something that's near and dear to me. I think it's important that our audience who are following the show, I think at some point or another, they like, I don't know about you, but when I listen to podcasts, I like to know them. Right? I like to know who they are. So I think it's important that this is a big part of my life over the last 6-7 years. And I would like to think that you and I have been big parts of our lives for a long time. And when things happen to me, I would think that it also affects the people around me. So I think I'd also like to get your thoughts on what you went through with me and how we felt and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So so we're gonna get into context here a bit. In 2015, I was working at Petco. I had noticed that I couldn't see out of my right eye. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's so weird. Like, maybe I should go to the doctor for this.
Yeah.
So it comes to turn out that I have something called optic neuritis, which means that my optic nerves were swollen based on pressure that was built in my head. Unfortunately, they weren't able to catch it fast enough. We weren't able to fix it fast enough. So I started losing. So my right eye has no light perception. I don't see anything out of my right eye. My left eye has very small. I can see a little bit. That's why, like, when I talk to you, Jose, I can look at you, right? I can look at people. Can't really make out facial expressions. I can't, but I can see things, and I wear glasses because I keep things in focus. Everything's kind of foggy in my eye and stuff, but, I'm learning to live with it. It's a process. And so when we figured out what it was, we were able to stop the damage that was going on to my other optic nerve to my left eye. So we were able to fix that. Somewhat, right? We were able to salvage what was left. And then it got worse. It got worse because I had to take blood thinners. I had to take blood thinners to kind of. There was a stent placed in my neck to kind of help the flow, so it doesn't have so much pressure in my head, right?
Right.
So then I had blood thinners. I tripped within a week or two, and I started bleeding internally. So much pain in my abdomen. I couldn't. So at this point, they had to thicken my blood as quick as they could.
Right.
To find out what was going on with me, they did a CT scan. The CT scan turns out that I'm allergic to the contrast on the CT scan. So that caused my kidneys to stop working. So I had an allergic reaction.
Right.
On top of that, they had to rethicken my blood. I was bleeding internally. I had a thrombosis. At this point, they said I wasn't going to make it. Right? They're like, we need to do something because he might not make it.
Right.
Don't really remember much. But obviously I'm here. Things worked out for the best, right?
Right.
I don't want to get into more detail. There's no reason I have to make people sad or anything because I'm here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're here. But so what I kind of wanted to bring that up because I wanted to talk a little bit about that so the audience kind of understands what has gone on in my life. But I I've done, I waited around for a little bit to see what was going to happen with me. Am I going to get better? Am I not going to get better? Whatever. Within a year, I said, you know what? I cannot just sit around and not do anything.
Right.
I need to do something with my life. And that's where Disability Pride Month comes around.
Okay.
I think the concept of Disability Pride Month is not to necessarily be proud of your disability, but show that your disability doesn't take over your life, but we take over the situation and we make things we make things as good as possible and as well as we can do it. And we put everything we can, right? Like whatever we can do, we do it 110 times better than we have to, right? And I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, was just kind of brush up a bit on what I'm doing, what I've done, my experiences, maybe your experiences a bit and stuff like that. So I will talk a little bit about how I started school. I am in the process of finishing my bachelor's degree. I am doing things now that I'm still trying to learn. There's a lot of things I'm still learning.
Right.
Even for the podcast, there's still things I'm learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are just, a little bit of things that a couple of things that I've been working on over the last couple of years.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something, obviously, I think looking it up, because you were talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so, it officially started in 2015, and it was part of a celebration of the ADA's 25th anniversary. So the ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act, right?
Okay.
And I think it's important because I think you don't see, well, maybe now you're starting to see it, but you don't see that representation a lot in media and in things like that. We're starting to, as a culture, get more inclusive in terms of, racial identities, gender identities, people's sexual preferences. I definitely think that disabilities are you're starting to see it more, right?
Yeah.
You'll see characters who maybe are visually impaired or who have a physical ailment like an amputated limb or whatever it might be. But I definitely think it's something that's important to talk about, right? Mm-hmm. Because the more you talk about it, the more you normalize it, and then it just becomes a thing where it's like, well, this is how this person operates. It's not a bad thing. It's just that everyone does things a different way.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, like, obviously, like, for school, like, right, like, what does a typical day at school look like for you? Like,
well, I gained accommodations. The schools that I've been attending have been nothing but great with me when it comes to giving me, for example, double time on tests. All my handouts and sheets and stuff all has to be in large font. For me, the size font that works for me is size 24, 24 font. I get books digitally pressed into PDF, so I can have programs on my computer that reads things out to me. I have software on my computer called ZoomText Fusion, which mixes JAWS and ZoomText all together. I can zoom in, I can zoom out. Enlarged keyboards, things that are trying to make things easier for me. But even so, it can still be kind of difficult. It's still kind of difficult because I will give you one example. I was doing a speech class, and usually when you have speech, you have notes, right?
Right.
But that's one thing that I had to learn over the last few years is learning how to remember things, right, and just engrave them into my head, because I can't look at these sheets of paper,
right,
because even if it is in large font, sometimes I still have to kind of get super close to it, and I feel sometimes it takes me a while to read things, and I say, you know what, I need to remember these. I just need to remember these things. So that's something that I actually do pride myself in, that I have to forcefully at points tell, okay, Renee, you have to remember these things. And as I remember them, they keep coming into my head. One of the problems, though, is that I've noticed that I stutter a lot now, because I have nothing to focus on, because I have no sheets of paper in front of me to really read, or, notes and things when I'm in general, right? Even when we do the podcast at times, I notice that sometimes I stutter. I'm like, oh my God, and I'm trying to get this word across, but I have it written down, but it's different for me to read it. So those are, a couple things that I'm trying to work on, right? That I'm trying to learn. And I think that You're absolutely right. I think trying to make it on the try to normalize these disabilities is something that's really important, because there's a lot of people out there that have disabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in your case, it's equal. It's even more challenging, right? Because you weren't born with a vision, so you have to unlearn everything you've learned, and kind of find a new way to do that.
It's funny you mentioned that. I have an aunt who I just spoke to yesterday, and she says, "Mijo, did you know that there's a family member? There's someone in our family that was born blind." And she goes, "Man, you should see her. She posts things on the internet about doing these things, and walking on her own and doing all these things, and I'm proud of her. I'm super proud of her because they can do these things. I'm not saying that mine is worse or hers is worse. The only thing that bothers me is when people compare these kind of things to me, because I'm like, well, I didn't have to go through all that.
Right.
Just like you said, I have to relearn all these things. When I go to the Braille Institute, shout out to the Braille Institute in Anaheim, they're teaching me how to use my cane. And they say, hey, make sure you look up. You always have to look up. You don't want to keep looking down at the ground. And I noticed that I tend to kind of keep looking at the ground because that's just something that I was accustomed to when you're walking. Right?
Yeah.
When you're walking, you're able to kind of, when you can see, you can see everything around you, and you can see the steps in front of you. Whether you're looking forward, you have your peripherals to look down.
Yeah.
And I can't do that, but I've always been so used to that.
Right.
So that's something I'm still trying to do.
Yeah.
Definitely getting better at it. But there's a lot of struggles within what I'm going through, but I don't want to take away from other people because everyone's going through that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, everyone has to. I mean, everyone has their struggles and their things that they need help with, right?
Yeah.
And for someone that's got a disability or has something where they need some accommodations or some extra help, it's just kind of like understanding that it's just you would do that for anybody anyway, right?
Yeah, of course.
So it's a thing that we're all kind of going through, and from my end, man, I was always shocked at how well you took everything that happened, right? So I was there with you basically the whole thing. I remember we'd visit you in the hospital
every day,
pretty much every day. And it was the kind of thing where it's like you were always in good spirits, even if maybe you didn't feel that way, but it always seemed like you were.
I appreciate that.
But it was the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, man, like you went through a lot of stuff in a very short amount of time. And at a point in your life where like you're kind of set in your ways, so you had to relearn all that shit later in life, and you were still really kind of positive about it. And you're honestly one of the people, I've never heard you complain about it or anything like that. You just took it in stride and kind of went through, man, and that's an important thing. I think a lot of people would have really weighed them down and it would have been a big issue, but for you it's just kind of like, all right, this is a new set of problems. I'm going to figure out how to work around them, and we'll just go from there.
I appreciate that. There's adversities with everyone, right? It's how you face them. It's how you decide, how do I get better at the things that I'm bad at? And in this case, I'm bad at things now. Well, I shouldn't say that. I have to relearn specific things.
Right.
And it's still a learning curve, but I think there are, I'm just, I'm sure there's people, for example, Jose, I'm sure, you have a long day at work. You're like, God, why me, man? Like, why did I have to, why did they give me such a hard time or something?
Right.
That happens to me as well. I'm not going to say that I'm positive 100% of the time. There's definitely times where I sometimes ask myself, like, why me? There's people out there that are worse than I am, but I just try to take a step back, and I think to myself, there's people out there that have it, that are completely blind, and they're kicking ass.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy for that. And on that topic as well, the blind community, they're funny, man. The blind community is hilarious, and I love the fact that I am in a community who take things so lightly.
Right.
Especially on TikTok, there's a lot of people out there. There's a big blind community on TikTok, and a lot of them are really funny, and they're not necessarily poking fun at each other, but mostly kind of just, I guess, pointing at the elephant in the room. You
Right,
know what I
right.
mean? And it's just, so I really like that. And I'd like to think that I'm like that too, right? Like there's times where, for example, I think it was yesterday or the day before,
Yeah.
where I text you, hey, I think I want to do this episode. And you're like, I didn't understand that last text. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
hashtag blind problems, my bad, you know?
Right,
Like,
right.
yeah, I think it's always good to, you know, you got to take light of things, you know?
I mean,
Yeah.
a sense of humor is important, right? Like it's one of those things that if you have it, it's a godsend, right?
Yeah.
Because then anything that kind of comes your way, you can take it and take the piss out of it and just kind
Yeah.
of go forward with that.
I think there's a difference between a sense of humor and being funny, though, because I'm just not funny.
I mean, there's definitely there's a difference.
Yeah,
Yes,
there,
yes,
there-
yes.
there's definitely a layer of funniness,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just not there.
You just got to work on the delivery, man.
Yeah, I think the delivery is what
It's the delivery.
Yeah, it's yeah. I will say that you have the delivery.
I try.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
I try sometimes,
Yeah.
but it doesn't always hit.
yeah, that's true.
It doesn't always hit.
But you know what? But most of the time they're pretty good.
I'll give myself.
Yeah, I'll give you credit on being a funny guy.
I appreciate that.
You're a
I
funny
appreciate
guy.
that.
It's how you tell the story.
Yeah. Well, God, I'm not going to do the whole scene. I
man.
can't do the whole scene.
Okay, all right, we won't do that. But you know, this was going to be a short episode. I figured this wasn't going to take too long. I just kind of wanted to throw it out there and say, guys, July is Disability Pride Month. I'm proud of myself for the things that I'm doing. I want to tell people out there, if you guys have disabilities, do not let the disability define you, but you define yourself, and just push forward and go through all these adversities that we have to go through. And there's always a way. There's always a way for everything. We're definitely going to put some links in that I have from like the National Blind Foundation, things for like the Brill Institute, a bunch of other things that I will be putting in the show notes. Maybe even I'll also put in the information for National Pride. I mean, for Disability Pride Month, I'll also have that information. We'll put all that information in the show notes. So if anybody wants to know any information on any of these things that I talked about today, please feel free. We'll have all that stuff on there as well. But I knew this was going to be a short one, but I kind of just wanted the audience to know my life, the last 6-7 years of my life, but how I'm moving forward and how I'm pushing along. And I'm not afraid to answer questions.
Right.
People ask me questions all the time, and I'm never afraid. I've said my story thousands of times, and I'm not, and I'll say it 1,001 times, right?
Yeah.
So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to email us. Feel free to send me a message on Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is, on our Half Step Down pages, and I'm will more than love to answer any questions that you guys have. If you guys need any information, I have some information on stuff for like blind foundations and all kinds of stuff like that. So, Jose, do you have anything you want to add?
I mean, honestly, so I'm a teacher, right? I work with students that have disabilities. So it's something I deal with every day, and it's the kind of thing where it's like, we put the stigma on people that have disabilities, the stigma
Yeah.
on people that have, but it really isn't really anything, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely
the
right.
reality of the situation is it's like everybody needs different things to kind of help them succeed. Mm-hmm. So whether that be, you are visually impaired, you're deaf, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You have a physical ailment where you're going to need crutches or whatever it might be. I mean, the reality of the situation is, I think you said it right. You don't let that define you, right?
Yep.
It just becomes a part of who you are as a whole. Mm-hmm. So I try to look at it that way, and I think if you're listening, just take that from it. Look at everyone as a whole, and just kind of try to understand them as a whole.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about it is, you will see sometimes, like, when someone has disability or something, they'll figure out ways to do things
Yeah.
that might help, someone that doesn't have it. It's like
Yeah.
just a more logical way of doing something.
Yeah.
Like they say, man, it takes all different kinds, right? And like
Yeah.
different points of view, different abilities, different things you learn and you see. All that's helpful. So
Yeah.
take in whatever you can.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm learning every day. Whether it's, oh man, maybe I can put this here to kind of remind me, that I have to turn it this way. It's just these little things, the little knickknacks that kind of come to you while you're doing these things. And that's the most important part is
Yeah.
never stop figuring out how to get better at whatever it is that you want to get better at.
Right.
And that's just something that I'm trying to work on.
Yeah.
And I think on top of that, Jose, there's a lot of things that get added on with a physical disability. It is a lot of mental strain, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that I have dealt with over the last couple of months. I want to say last year or so, especially since the pandemic hit, with my dad passing away and
Right.
and with all the pandemic stuff. It's just on top of my, like you said, my physical ailments or my disability. On top of that, you also add on that added stress, right? For example, things that you can get done in 20 minutes are things that takes me an hour to get done.
Right.
A good example, for the audience who doesn't know, Jose, at this point for the show, edits the entire show. Jose edits everything. He does all of that stuff, and I'm super, super, super like grateful that he's willing to go the extra mile for the show, because at the end of the day, we love doing this, right?
Yeah. This is fun.
There's a lot of fun that we can kind of just, shoot the shit and just kind of hang out and talk, whatever it is that we want to talk about. But there's times where I'm just like, I wish I can do something to help out more, right? But that shouldn't, there's a difference between just, man, I wish, instead of wishing, figuring out ways to do it.
Right.
And those are things that I have to learn how to do on my own. And I'm sure there's people out there who feel the same way. So that's another thing I also want to bring up. It's like, don't let anything, like, there's nothing out there that is like daunting enough for you to not do it.
Right.
When we did this podcast, at first I was like, dude, this is really daunting for me. Like, this is a lot, right? But now look at us, man. It's so much smoother. Everything's going to be probably a little hard to get used to when you first start, but I'm sure as time goes on, you'll get better at it, right?
Yeah.
You just get better at it. So, like I said before, and I sound like like a broken record, but don't let the disability define you, right? Define who you are.
Yeah, and then I think just to add this thing, anxiety and like your mental health is something that affects, everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's just something that if you're feeling that's natural, but especially if you have a disability, and especially if someone who didn't grow up with it, so they had to get used to it later. It's always take that time to figure that out and see what it is, so you can work through it. And if you work through it, share it with other people, you'll find that you're not alone, and most of the time, and you'll be fine.
Yes, absolutely not alone. Yeah. Why don't we get into the wind down?
Let's get into the wind down.
Let's make things a little
let's
little
lighten
brighter.
it up. Let's lighten it up.
Let's lighten it up a bit.
Okay, we were going to talk about, let's see. So something I'm super excited about. I remember hearing about this when Disney Plus was announcing all of their various Star Wars things.
Speaking of Disney Plus, are you going to watch Black Widow?
Yeah, I plan on it. I don't know if I'm going to pay the $30.
Are you going to go to the theater?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one I'm going to do yet.
I might.
Yeah.
Just because at this point I feel like...
I think it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd probably go see it in the theater.
Same.
But yeah, so Disney Plus has been really killing it with a lot of their original content. Like The Mandalorian's been great. I'm an episode behind on Loki, but that's been great. But one of the things I'm really looking forward to, they announced it, is the Star Wars Visions anime anthology, right?
Yes.
So when I first heard about this, I'm like, okay, this can be either really cool or it can be super lame. It really depends on what way Disney wants to go with it.
Yep.
But they have really hooked up with some of the kind of top flight studios in anime. The one I'm really looking forward to is Studio Trigger. Mm-hmm. They have a really unique art style. They did the show Kill la Kill. But this thing looks awesome. And I think they're really... What I like about it is, the Star Wars originally had a big influence from samurai movies.
Yep.
Like Akira Kurosawa was a huge influence on George Lucas. Yeah. And if you watch like Star Wars, before the fights got so kind of elaborate, they were basically like samurai duels.
Yeah.
They're like
Two hands.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
To this day, my favorite lightsaber duel is in Rebels, Star Wars Rebels. And spoiler alert, but it's the duel between Darth Maul and old Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, it's Darth Maul is trying to get like revenge on him. But it's a straight up samurai duel. It's over in like 4 moves.
Yeah.
But it's just old school, like awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see what's happening.
That's
Some of
gonna be
these
great.
visuals
I saw
look cool.
the first trailer. I haven't seen the second because I think the second trailer dropped already. But I have not seen the second one. But the first one, from what I saw, looks pretty amazing. So, and again, we've said this before. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan.
It really is.
Because whether or not you're gonna like it or not, the fact that you have more content to watch to either complain about or love, right? What more do you want?
That's all we.
That's all we really want, right?
And in a weird way, giving a nerd something to complain about is what they want.
Yeah.
It's what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Renee, are you excited that the gelatinous cube has come to Magic the Gathering?
All right, here's the thing. So, Wizards because Wizards owns Dungeons and Dragons, and they also own Magic the Gathering. So it's been a long time coming. So they are releasing a Dungeons and Dragons set called, I believe it's the Forgotten Realms, which I think is the 20th or 25th anniversary of the Forgotten Realms of a story that was released. And so now you have the Gelatinous Cube. Gelatinous Cube eats village.
Yeah.
I think it's great. That's a
good.
Wayne's World reference.
I love it.
Yeah. But you know what? The spoilers already ended. The spoilers, it's completely spoiled. It's good to go. I think it's getting released this week, or I think next week or the week after.
Okay.
Some of those cards are pretty powerful. I've seen some of them. They look pretty good. So outside, you know what? I don't really know much about the Forgotten Realms, but it looks really interesting. I'm excited to play with some of these cards. Some of them are just, there's a few out there. I'm like, wow, these are pretty strong, man. Pretty powerful for the formats that I like to play. So we'll see how it goes. Should be fun, though. And I think they've already announced that they're going to do a Lord of the Rings. They're also going to do, but this is like outside of the Magic universe. It's kind of like an Ultimate universe. Like an Ultimate Marvel universe. It's kind of that idea. I'm not 100% sure where it's going, but I do know they're already announcing a Lord of the Rings one. They've already announced that one.
That was only a matter of time.
Yeah. But I think when two things mash together, when you have a collab, I mean, there's hopefully only good can come from it, right? But I think you also have those purists, right, who are just like, dude, really, it's not.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if two things are going to go together, it's Magic and Dungeons.
Yeah,
and Dragons,
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
A lot of dragons in this set already.
A lot of
dragons.
Okay, and this is the last thing I want to talk about. This is interesting. So this year marks the 30th anniversary of the Black Album, Metallica's. Let's call it their breakthrough album.
record. Yeah.
Obviously, they had their first 4 records, which are like, if you're a metalhead, they're like required reading.
Yeah.
You gotta listen to them.
Yeah. If there was a high school for metal music, those are part of the core.
Those are that's core curriculum. You got to do that.
Yeah.
And as is the popular thing to do now, right? You hit a big milestone anniversary, you release something.
Yeah.
Metallica on this one, though, on top of giving you basically a remastered album, which I'm sure they're going to come out, they're going to do this thing called the Blacklist. Have you heard of this?
No, I have not.
Okay. So they have gotten together with artists of all genres, okay, to cover their favorite songs off of the Black Album in whatever style they want. So, for example, Weezer is covering Enter Sandman, along with Mac DeMarco, Ghost, Juanes, Sam Fender, doing that song however they want to do it. Listen to some of these other ones.
Okay.
Sad But True, Saint Vincent, White Reaper, Royal Blood, the Mexican Institute of Sound featuring La Perla and Guerra MX. They're all doing Sad But True.
So there's going to be different I know you mentioned Enter Sandman, right?
Yeah.
You have was it Weezer?
Yeah.
I forgot who else you said, but
yeah,
they're just so there's going to be like 8 versions of that song.
They're basically they're releasing this album where they give it to these people. It's like, I'm just going to go through a list of people that are on here. Cage the Elephant, Corey Taylor, the Neptunes, Portugal the Man, Volbeat.
I love Portugal the Man.
Phoebe Bridger.
I love Phoebe Bridgers too.
Miley Cyrus featuring Elton John, Yo-Yo Ma, Dave Gahan, My Morning Jacket,
I love My Morning Jacket.
Chris Stapleton. I'm skipping a lot of them. Like there's just all these.
Wow.
Rodrigo and Gabriela.
Yeah.
All of them are going to do a song off of it, however they want to do it. I think this is one of the cooler.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, like I thought back, like why wouldn't they do one of their other albums? And I think this is the most, in terms of variety of sound that they had up until that point.
Yeah.
And it only makes sense.
Yeah, you know, again, it's so funny because when we talk about things on the wind down, I always go back and like, man, that would have been a good one to talk about, you know, during this episode. But we forget how influential Metallica was, or how influential they are. You know what I mean? Well, most specifically the Black Album, I guess, right? When it comes to like mainstay, not necessarily just the metal scene, but just mainstay. Because look at the amount of artists from different types of genres just like jumping into this record, you know?
Yeah, I think the Black Album is definitely one of those. I'm going to go ahead and say it's more of a straightforward rock album.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly some metal there, but it was really kind of a mainstream rock record. But you had some of the best, I mean, like Nothing Else Matters, like stuff like that. Like they really went in different directions. And for them to be like, all right, let's just let anyone do it in whatever style they want. And for all those bands to be like, yeah, they influenced me in one way or another. I think that's cool. I'm excited.
Yeah.
We got to think of like, what would be other cool bands that would have like something
that
like
would have
this?
something like this?
Yeah.
Well, Juan Gabriel did that. Gabriel did that. There's an interesting story with Juanes and Juan Gabriel. Juan Gabriel is, for those of you who aren't familiar with Mexican Spanish pop music, I guess. He is like the Michael Jackson of Spanish music, right? Spanish pop.
Juan he's like a legend.
Yeah. So Juanes is a big star. He's a big artist, right?
My mom loves Juanes.
So there's a story out there where he was going to he had the same kind of concept, like, yo, I want to have, you know, new renditions of my music, of these songs, but I want artists to accompany me with these songs, right? So I guess Juanes was going to do one of the songs with him, and he walks in, he goes to the record studio, and he goes, recording studio, and he goes, hey, you know, I'm here to record. And he goes, oh, okay. He goes, you know what, Juan Gabriel's not here yet. So if you want to go and come back, he'll be back. He said he'll be in about 2-3 hours. He goes, okay. So Juanes says, instead of walking out, he goes into the lobby, and he sits and he waits for Juan Gabriel to show up.
Oh my God, okay.
And he's like, well, he's not going to be back for about 2-3 hours. He's like, no, I'll wait here. And at the end of the interview, he says, I would never want to miss an opportunity. God forbid I were to walk out and he happens to show up earlier, and I lost my window to record with Juan Gabriel. So I said, man, like the level of respect that somebody like that has for some, you know, that for like Juanes, who's such a big star, has for someone like Juan Gabriel, like that says a lot, right? That says a lot about the influence that man had with, you know, that had in Spanish music, you know. So I think that would be a good episode. Maybe we should think about doing that.
No.
Right? What albums would be good, right? Like what records would be good that would be a good idea to kind of render them in for the rest of artists, for the other artists.
Because I mean, you're right. I mean, Metallica is definitely one of the bands that I think has earned the respect of pretty much everyone.
Maybe Joshua Tree.
Joshua Tree would probably be one. Yeah, that'd be one. For sure.
Yeah. This was good, man.
This is a fun one.
You know, Jose, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really enjoyed it. You know, just before we get into the plugs and stuff, I just want to say thank you. I also want to give a big shout out to my friends and family. Like, over the last few years, like I've said, you know, I've gone through a lot, and I'm still learning to deal with this. And so I just kind of want to say, you know, to my sisters, my brother, my mom, my girlfriend, to Marta, to you, to family, Gabby, and Paul, everybody, like, thank you for going through this experience with me, going through this walk of life with me, and learning to adapt with me. Because at the end of the day, I'm not only going through it, like everybody else around me has to adapt to it, right?
Right.
So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much to all of you, and you, Jose, for, just kind of also kind of helping me, teaching me, and kind of just, moving on, right?
No,
Kinda
man.
just
I mean,
moving on with it.
you're an inspiration, man. Like I said, like you've
Thank
always
you.
been positive about it. So it is our pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But on a lighter note, Jose, where can people find us on the interwebs?
All right, guys, you're gonna want to go to www.halfstepdownpod.com.
Do people still do that?
No, but if you did, you could do that. Go to the World Wide Web.
Okay.
Halfstepdownpod.com is your one-stop Half Step Down shop. It's got everything you need. Links to everything are there. Things like our Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah.
Our handles are at halfstepdownpod. You can go there. Instagram has little previews of our Spotify playlist on there. It's a great way to just kind of keep up with us and what we're doing.
I'm going to start putting polls on Twitter, guys.
We should start doing that. I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
Of course, like I just said, check out our Instagram stories for previews of the playlist. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/halfstepdownpod. Don't forget to look us up on YouTube. You're going to have to search us up in the search bar. Scroll down for about a half an hour, and then we're there. But if we can get to 100 subscribers, I can come up with a custom URL, and it'd be a lot easier to find us. And we are eventually going to film these.
Yes.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we've been talking about it over the last couple of days, so I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than later.
Yeah, the ball is rolling on
Yeah.
that. Again, check out the playlist in the description. If you like what you hear, please rate and review us on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget to spread the word using hashtag HalfStepDownPod. And again, coming this fall on TitanRadio.org is Half Step Down Radio.
And you can find all that information on our link tree.
On our link tree, which is in our
on our bios.
in our bios
Yeah,
for all
on
our socials.
For all our social medias, you can just find us
I
there.
should put it on the website too.
Oh, that would be good too.
That'd be good.
So people can find us there. You'll find our links to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our Spotify playlist, our YouTube, our business inquiries for our emails, Facebook. Everything that we just talked about is also on our link tree. You can find us on our bio. So, Jose, thank you so much for doing this, and we shall see each other next week. Take it easy, everyone.
Yeah, give it up for these guys. I promise you guys.
Just so we're all clear, that was not like a real song. Okay. Made that up.